Hello, thank you for coming. I believe this is the first time this is happening, and actually very gladly surprised about the number of people here. Work really well done, Lina. And anyway, I'm not going to really talk to you about anything that Yahoo's doing, but let me first introduce myself. And I've been at Yahoo for 8 years, building a number of things, and over the last 3-4 years working mainly on building models to personalize content and ads for users. And what I've been doing over the last 2 years, now almost 2 years, is build a native advertising marketplace. And everybody says like native advertising. It's like, what the heck does native mean? And I thought I will throw around some thoughts around what I think native is and why it's mainly an algorithmic problem, a science problem to actually solve it, rather than the classic display of it's a business problem, it's a volume problem, it's a CPM problem. So we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions, and if any of these, hope I remove all the math from it, so it should be fairly lightweight. But if there's any questions that you have, just I think it might be better to break in and explain what it is, otherwise you're going to start lingering behind. Okay. Let's see if I get this. So, is there a way to shift that a little bit? High tech. There we go. Robotic arm. Actually, not. So, native ads is, what the first definition that I actually heard was content and ads share the same information architecture. It's not like, oh, it's really hard to understand. I think the best one that I actually heard is, they share ads and content on whatever it is, an app or a page, share the, not just the form, but also the function they're trying to work. So, for example, if I'm sharing something, I can share the ad or I can share the content. If I can, like in Twitter, I can retweet the ad or I can retweet the content. Then they not just look alike, they actually behave identically the same. So to recap a little bit why that is important, if you actually look at how advertising has evolved over the last 20 years online, and Yahoo has actually played a key factor into that with the definition, for example, of what behavioral targeting was. That was an invention that came out of Yahoo. So if you look at the top of the funnel, the typical brand advertisers, they look at interests of the users, they look at things like attributes. So that's my favorite example of dog owners. There was another one that we had once about vodka drinking, which I think was even cooler. Live stage, typical, actually these are, if you know about advertising in display, these are fantastic segments to sell things like life transitions, right? Things like lifestyle, I think geo-targeting, demographics, typical things. Just, essentially, brands are looking into volume, and these are what I call mega segments, large chunks of the population that you just put them together so you have enough volume of that particular population. Now comes people that they are engaged with the site, and traditionally that's the equivalent of search. Is if I do a search query, I know that are you in discovery mode, are you in buying mode, what are you, what exactly are you trying to do with the site? So engagement advertisers, they try and leverage that. So as a search box there on finance, it could be an ad, it could be mail, it could be from things like we do mail retargeting, but it doesn't really matter. There's different examples that you extract to the actual engagement with the page, what's happening. And it could be a offline behavior. And then the final one is the typical direct response. I know exactly what you're after, whether it's online or offline. Typical retargeting use cases. You put something on a shopping cart, you abandon your shopping cart, go elsewhere on the web, you follow that user into that first-party pixel retargeting, just try to track them. So my mental mapping into this is like, on the very top, these guys don't really have an incentive for driving ad quality. The guys at the bottom, they don't quite care about how conversion happened. They just care about the conversion. And the guys in the middle are very difficult because unlike in search, you have a query, in non-search online, you don't actually know what the user wants. And even if you know what the user wants, and even if you show an ad and the ad converts offline, then the question, or somewhere else in the web, the question is how do you drive attribution to whatever happened, unlike in search. And I think that's the sweet spot, what I call gray zone for what native lives. Some examples, just that's ours. It's another one, I don't know where I got it from anymore. Twitter, obviously, Facebook. And actually, this is one of my favorite native ad examples because there are two ads in there, and one of them is obvious to see at the very bottom, sorry, at the very top, which is, you found, for the guys at the back that probably don't see it. This is Fandango as an app, and is showing you, I'm looking for cinemas to go, and he's showing me for that particular cinema, I can get and buy the tickets, and that's an ad from the cinema chain themselves advertising on Fandango. But the most interesting one, I think, is the Yelp one, where actually Yelp pays for that link on the app. So it's a very, very subtle ad format. But most interestingly, it's why is this a change versus what we had in the past. So if you look at what I call the simplified publisher household, I think it's the how would I say, the very simple way of understanding it. I have a number of users, and every user will come a number of times, and will do page views. Then for every page view per user, I will manage to sell a percentage of those. And for every of those that I sell, I make some money. And you multiply all these things together, it gives you total revenue. The interesting thing is that there are different parts of the organization responsible for that. And I think this is the crux of what makes native different from display. There are the sales teams, which really they're looking into, okay, let's buy more supply. And they made all these deals left and right. They call supply. That's it. Ring a bell, right? Then you give them incentive and bonuses for sell-through rates. And they have these rate cards, and they change the rate cards to play with it. And then they make money for it. And then there is another team which happens to be part of the equation, but the sales teams give zero importance except give us a better product and more content, which are responsible for engagement. However, when you look at the numbers, this is only the short term, and the editorial teams are not only looking for today, they're looking for tomorrow, which actually means the total revenue a publisher has out of advertising is not just today's revenue, but it's actually future revenue. So traditionally in display, you care about the RPMs. In native, you care about the RPMs, which is the revenue today, but I also care about the revenue in the future. That's my long-term value as a publisher. And I think the main role of a native marketplace is to ensure that both sides of the equation are homogeneous. Now I'm putting a plus sign. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. On CPM is the main way of selling ads on the left-hand side, but that's not entirely compatible with how you make money on the right-hand side. So what is the issue? Essentially, there's a lot of text here, forget about it. But you can read it if you want. So the first thing is, if I'm a user and I see an annoying ad, going back to the right-hand side of the equation, and I do not like the ad, then there are two things that can happen. One is I might never come back to that publisher, which is the one extreme situation. The other one is I might not click ads on that particular publisher, which is what I'm going to show you in a minute as the classical negative externality. So that's a classic display ad, and I picked this one in purpose. Very sad news on the article, and I get something that is completely inappropriate for the context, which in this particular case will most likely make me not to come back to this particular publisher. Now the publisher has incurred here a long-term value, a loss of a long-term value of a user, but is not captured on any of the incentives the sales teams are getting, whereas the editorial team will get penalized because their audience numbers will go down. Similar one, I don't know, you can actually, the fear of DAGs, and actually it's an insurance company that happens to have a DAG, which is a very inappropriate match also. So what that leads is, if you remember the negative externalities, there are two kinds. One, I do not return. The other one is I don't click on ads. And unfortunately, on the world of CPM, that is the eye tracking study that actually shows where people are paying attention to. And as you probably see for different examples, the green boxes are where the ads are. You can actually see the users have learned to completely ignore it, right? It's like they're completely blind about it. So the long-term incentive of revenue is gone, and that kind of drives a cycle of the ad prices keep increasing, and I keep putting more ads, and it gets harder to monetize, and it all goes downhill because the users don't really care whatsoever about the ads are on the page. So examples of where native advertising are going wrong, which is basically we copying the model of display and training the users to ignore native, which is basically we saying, I'm just going to optimize for CPM. So the first one is I paint it and make it look, and if any of you are responsible for these apps, I apologize tremendously. Two examples of where these things look like ads. Actually, in this one, at least they have the decency of saying that it's a promoted ad, promoted story. But actually, if you click on it, it's really clickbait, and it has nothing to do with the app. So the first insight, I guess, that we had, and I think most people are going that, is that pricing by CPM is probably a bad idea. You're better off pricing on clicks. Okay, we'll try that. So this is from Taboola, and down there on the left has the more from the web, which will basically drive traffic to other publishers on the web. Unfortunately, you actually list what those things are, and you went through them actually the same as in there on the top on the images. You would actually notice that these are mainly all of them are lists, like 5 exercises, 15 celebrities, 5 richest Oscar winning, 10 nicest cars. If you go to this site, there will be normally a beautiful imagery with slideshow. And every time you click, you basically really refreshing the page and user action, and you just keep loading more and more and more CPM ads. So in the one with 10, the hope is that, if you go through 10 of them and you get like a $2 RPM and you go through all of them, then they might actually be able to bid high for this one. Now for the user, it's like completely crappy user experience. I've been led to click on something that I have absolutely zero interest after the fact. I didn't learn anything. So after a while, the user would learn, I'm not going to click on anything that has to do with from the web. And I could share data about this, but unfortunately I cannot share it. So you'll have to believe me that users learn not to click. So CPC or clicks are probably not good either. So our take into what this means is you have to match 3 different vectors. The one and that we always done, which was advertisers want a lot of clicks or a lot of leads or a lot of conversions, and they want return investment, which means if I have a budget, I want to make sure that I get more than I put into the advertising campaign. Now, publishers want to optimize for growing engagement. They don't want their curves to go down, but they also want to make sure that the yield on the page as a whole, that RPM number, stays flat, or at least goes up, or at least stays flat. You don't want to go down. That's the publisher calculus. And then consumers want to learn things. And the question is, how do I get all these 3 things together and create an objective function that allows me to optimize? So that's my mathematical objective problem. I remove all the subject to constraints and I make it easy, but basically giving a user an opportunity for a serve and a page, a context, an existing corpus of documents and ads, and actually the and is really important. How do I select the best content to serve? So the simplified version is, okay, so I capture the left-hand side, which is the CPC times the probability of click given a view. And I say I'm going to capture something around the probability of being happy given that I've clicked. So that's the first approximation. That's the post-click quality. Can I capture that somehow? The challenge then that happens on the web is how do I capture that? How do I have that dwell time? On mobile, actually, is a very, very interesting environment because you can do very interesting tricks to understand that, for example, dwell time or that bounce rate that is actually happening in the app. But unfortunately, if you go on the previous one, sorry, I revealed the story already, but even in this one, there is a problem. There is a problem that I'm only capturing a negative externality for people who click. But it could be that by showing the ad itself, the user was already annoyed. Therefore, you have to include something around, okay, we selected the ad, we showed on the page, but there is a probability the user might be annoyed by what you see on the page. So, what we call pre-click quality. Just the impression without the click is incurring a cost. But a click, you can, I might add in a few more. A click is not enough. It could be that a click and dwell time, but I do not convert and I do not align with the objective of the advertiser, therefore you add more. So what you end up is with a formula like this that has like 25 factors to model that thing called quality. And that quality really is describing how does the user behave, what are the advertiser objectives and what are the publisher objectives. And each of them has different forces, and you have to train a model based on different, what we call supply sections, and each of them have different weights as of how do these things impact. There is not a global model. It becomes very specialized based on where you are, and you need big data and all these things to really